Believe it, Florida State has players being poached right now.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 podcasting network in America. And thank you for helping that come to fruition. Whether it's hockey, basketball, football, amateur, pro, we have a podcast for you here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are going to get to the pick I have for Florida State Virginia Tech with a few caveats with some injury thoughts on that game. And after that, I'm sure many of you will probably be surprised by my pick, but we'll get into who, what, when, where, and why later on. We're going to talk about the players that Florida State needs to keep most this offseason and keep them from being poached. I'm going to rank them, give you an idea what I think some of these players are going to be worth, and what Florida State, unfortunately, is going to have to do financially to have a roster for the next coach after Mike Norvell is fired. And to that end, I'm going to start ranking them right now. Offense, then defense. We're going to go through this top to bottom, why I think certain players are so valuable, because the next staff needs to have some really good players to come in the door, or it could be a very bad 2026. So let's get started with that right now. This is not in any particular order in terms of position or whatever. I'm going offense and defense. So we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. And the first player, I think, above all else, that might surprise you, and I'm fine with it. I'll explain. But the first player I think they have to find a way to keep is because of his overall rare skills, local guy, everything else combined. This is one of the rarest players in Florida State history, which is tough to say. But think about the following. Somebody that was an announcer earlier this year was talking about Micahi Danzy and his ability to be a 400-meter sprinter. He's elite. Not just elite by Florida State standards, not by track standards at the collegiate level, not even the United States. It was reported they had the 9th fastest time in the world. Let's just say that's close. Let's say it's 25th. That's still smoking for a guy who also plays football and a guy that's a redshirt freshman. That's ridiculous. Imagine what he's going to be able to do, because he obviously assimilated from running back to wide receiver really fast. Yes, pun intended. And it's been impressive to see him continue to grow as a route runner, be confident in what he does, even on simple plays, whether it's just a straight go route, maybe it's a drag route, one of those reverses. He just does what he does. He doesn't try to get fancy. I'm just going to outrun you. Amen to that. But here's an example of why he's more important than just what he can do for the Noles the next year or two. They'll probably only get him for one more season. He'll turn pro. But to that end, guys like him can be utilized by Florida State University, even when they're not wearing the garnet and gold, for years and years and years. From a physical standpoint, you cannot teach what Micahi has. It's not possible. Literally now, top 10 in the world in an event, like it's a quarter mile, you're a freakish athlete by definition. And to see him gravitate to the wide receiver position, and shout out to Tim Harris Jr. for helping him make that transition to wide receiver, seemed like it was more or less seamless. Imagine what he's going to be in another year with another spring, with another weight room, and then going to the NFL. He could be a guy, hypothetically speaking, that ends up with a gold jacket, because very few human beings can run like Danzy that also possess his height and his length. This is a guy that could be a #1 in the NFL for 10 years. He could be a guy that catches 800 passes in the NFL. You don't think Florida State would sell that forever? If you're the administration right now, you need to find a way to maximize the young man while he's on campus. And I was fortunate enough to have a chance to see him practice at Florida High in Tallahassee, get to know him a little bit a couple of years ago when he was still in high school. He told me he just wanted to go to Florida State. He was happy with it. Very down-to-earth young man. He represents everything you can imagine that any institution would want. And then he's awesome in a rare way. That speed transcends. To this day, you think about Peter Warwick or Lavernius Coles, all kinds of different players. The speed for Florida State is what they're known for. Dion, work done. So many different guys. Yeah, Micahi's right there with him. Maybe even faster than some of them. I think this is a player that Florida State has to keep. Before anybody asks, I don't know how you put a price tag on what he's worth. But if you don't think that you need to make sure that he stays at Florida State, and on top of it, while I'm on it, that they need to promote him to help promote the institution, track and football, not one or the other, both. The next head coach has got to let him run track because he might be better at track than he even is at football, which is kind of scary to think. This is a special athlete. They have to find a way to make sure there's no chance that he leaves, that he's fully engaged at the university in every way possible. So that's my number one. And then number two, probably won't surprise anybody, that's Kromah, freshman running back at a Lee County High School up in Georgia. Very talented player. Norvell ironically mentioned earlier this week, hey, we're going to focus on this guy a little bit more down the stretch. I don't know what in the world is going on at running back. I listened to War Chant earlier today. They were kind of talking about that too. It's like there's been no chemistry. 1 week it's Singleton, 1 week it's, Cam Davis got some reps earlier this year. And then it was another game. It was Kromah, etc. Can we just see Kromah the last 3 games as the focal guy? Not that you don't rotate. It would be nice. Very talented, hardworking young man. And again, personality-wise, just I've been around him a few times. This is the kind of young man you want representing Florida State University. Perfect. If you got to pay him a little extra because you're going through a coaching change after this year, is what it is. That administration better set aside money with the boosters. However they do that, they better be ready for that. Because if you don't think Georgia and Alabama and all these other schools aren't going to make serious overtures, and I'm sure they're aware of this at Florida State, I got some news for you. But it could get crazy. Oregon, schools like that, they just have all but unlimited money because of Phil Knight and Miami. They don't care. They're all going to try to cheat to steal Florida State's players. And just as an example, I won't go into the school. There's another school that I know that is kind of going through it right now. They've had several of their key offense players, especially weapons like skill players. Several of them have multiple offers on the table. Just call them straight up. Florida State has to be ready for Kromah, Danzy, and all these guys, not to get offers, but to get ridiculous offers. You're going to be paying 7 figures. If you don't want to, that's fine. They'll be gone. So those are top 2 on my board. I also want to give a shout out to Randy Pittman and Landon Thomas and the tight ends in general. It's a pretty good tight end room. We'll see. You got the young guy that got banged up earlier this year. That's fine. It'll come back around. Amaree plays a little tight end too. We'll get to the defensive side of the ball here in a minute. But we need to make sure that whoever the next head coach is knows not 1, but 2 tight ends. Randy Pittman is a dude, H-back / tight end / fullback / slot receiver. He's a fun guy to watch. Landon Thomas, he's still got plenty of time. This is only his 2nd year, rare player. They need to pay those guys because if they don't, somebody else will. To that end, Boggs. Javen Boggs has been banged up quite a bit this year. It's unfortunate, but he's a true freshman. Lots of promise. And then Wayne McCoy, I know he had some boneheaded moments there in the Clemson game. It happens. He's a redshirt freshman with a lot of talent. Those are just some of the skill guys that I think. And before anybody asks me on the offensive line and the younger guys, it's a very simple answer. All of them. This is where I'm really concerned. You don't know yet who your next O-line coach is going to be if it changes. And even if it is the same coach, Herb's a really good guy and really good coach, great guy. You don't know which ones are really going to hit yet because you just don't know until they're in games. So the only way to do this properly is to completely and utterly overspend all of them. That's rough. They've got a bunch of young guys that have barely played because of all the transfers. But you're only going to get to where you need to go is if you have them all back and they all go through spring and then it plays out from there. You're probably going to have to overpay there too. It is what it is. Now, before I go into the defense on the other side, a couple of points here. Just in general, doesn't matter if it's offense or defense. As far as guys leaving, from my experience in talking to agents, 7-on-7 coaches, players themselves, etc., around the country, 2 points. Number 1, the timing of the coaching change. Let's just say Norvell gets fired Sunday afternoon, the 30th of November, whatever. That's 3 days before signing day, by the way, and it's about a month or so before the portal opens. That would at least give you a chance to kind of get started talking to these guys. But it's even more important, keyword here, timing. You need the next head coach named within a week at the latest. That's rough. Or that portal is going to open after a second bad year. It's going to be tough. The things I'm talking about are true, but I'm not saying they're easy. And it's also why I'm going to say, I've already said several times, and I will continue to say, you're going to have to overpay to keep a lot of these guys. Florida State's not a good situation with that because of how they've played the last couple of years. Some guys may want a fresh start, even if they're offered more at Florida State. Then at that point, it's probably best to cut bait. Anyway, number two, just style of play. Who do you hire at each position? Not just over theme, arching, like overarching theme of what defensive scheme or special teams or the defensive ends. Are they going to be an outside linebacker at a 3-4, 4-3? Everybody's got a preference. So you got to plan accordingly, gain as much knowledge as possible from the current roster, like literally off the record, talk to them. Hey, what do you want to be in once that firing happens? So we know. Just to give our next head coach an idea, the best chance to make this work. Be prepared. If you do those two things, get the new coach in fast, and I mean fast, and you have the information on the spot for that new coach, hey, this is what they want to run, then you've got a better chance to assimilate new coaching staff to the players that are already at Florida State. When we come back, we're going to switch over, talk about the defense, because there are some really key players there, and Florida State's actually got even more talent, especially at one spot. If they keep it, next year will be a very good defense. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash, and it's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this past week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving every time you order. These players delivered this last week, so let's break it down. It's pretty simple. For Florida State, it's Deuce Robinson. 9 catches, over 120 yards against Clemson. He was a man possessed, even in an offense that struggled. And he wasn't perfect, but he was the most clutch guy because Clemson's got some dudes in their secondary. He just wasn't going to be denied. It's fun to watch him play, and I really enjoy his effort. Deuce Robinson has been a joy to see at Florida State. And just like Deuce Robinson provided some big plays for the Florida State football team, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday when you order. Save it up all season long, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo good through November the 18th. Thank you, Ian, for checking out Locked On Seminoles each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. If you have not already, become an everydayer, subscribe to the channel, share it. Make sure you comment on YouTube. We have a lot of blasts with the mailbag episodes. I'll probably have one on Sunday night or Monday. No matter how the game goes between Virginia Tech and Florida State, there will be a lot to say. I have the post-game show immediately after, so make sure you check out that as well. Let's flip it over to the D. These are the guys in particular that I want to start with. And I'm just going to start up front because defense starts with defensive linemen. This shout out to Odell Haggins, the great one himself as a player and as a coach and now an administrator for Florida State University. You got the Desir twins. Definitely got it. That's lock, stock, and barrel. Florida State bought into them when some other schools didn't. Shout out for screwing that up for schools across the country. But there's also somebody that is, I think, now a full-time defensive player, depends on how you want to rank him, that I would even put above the Desir twins, and that is saying something. Amaree Williams. Why do I say him? 2 reasons. Number one, they don't have any pass rushers, like natural, true edge pass rushers. You've heard me talk about it all year. And if you heard me talk about recruiting the other day here on the podcast, what was the only position that we talked about? Defensive end, junior college players, guys that were kind of under the radar. Florida State is just turning over every rock. They're in a terrible place for that true weak side defensive end. Of all schools, thanks, Mike. Way to go, buddy. Florida State is bereft of pass rushers. It's unbelievable. They cannot lose Amaree. He's going to get offers galore. If you don't think Mario Cristobal wouldn't do anything to steal a player from Florida State, you are high. And that's just one guy among many, many others. there's going to be a lot of different offers coming his way. Kid from Palm Beach County, about everybody recruits down there. He's going to get plenty of offers. So for me, it starts with Amaree, the Desir twins. And then, of course, he's been banged up for a lot of this year. But Kevin Wynn, true freshman out of Georgia, nose guards are rare. They are very, very rare. Florida State is going to have to fend off UGA. I guarantee you, Georgia's trying to steal him 100%. They were in his recruitment to the end. Texas is probably trying to steal him. They really want to get big, big, big defensive linemen. Those are just a couple. I would imagine that any other school that Kevin called would at least take that phone call. You know, I mean, like at Penn State, the next coach wouldn't take Kevin on sight unseen, just knowing him. You can't teach 330. He was a borderline 5-star guy. Yeah, they're going to take him. Anybody would. So those four, I mean, if you keep all of the Desir twins, Mandrell and Daryl, Amaree and Kevin, just that. You still got Daniel Lyons has got eligibility left. You got KJ Sampson. Hopefully you can keep those guys too. But if you keep the freshmen and sophomores, and yes, I'll just say it, they're probably going to get prioritized more so the next coach can mold some guys. That would be a tremendous start. You could have a pretty good defense at a core with freshmen and sophomores. That's really rare. So I think Florida State needs to do that. Moving to that second level, this was the hardest by a million miles. I don't know what to tell you here. Man, linebacker has been a very awkward spot for the Noles this season. You know, Cryer has another year. Nicholson has another year. Jaden Parrish is a redshirt freshman. Those are three I wrote down, but it depends on the scheme. And none of those guys are known as pass first linebackers, like they're good in coverage. They got to find somebody. They're going to have to spend some serious money on a portal linebacker to be good next year, no matter the scheme, that is truly somebody good in coverage, because right now they don't have anything. And on top of that, is it somebody else that's still on the roster? Do they need to do something different in how they recruit with the next staff? Obviously, but do you go all in on the portal? Like, there's so many questions I have. I'm not sure what they're going to attack with the most important priority points at linebacker. It's tough. It's really, really tough. To that end, maybe you see 3 or 4 guys come in the portal this year. That could be the spot more than any other that FSU hits, barring them just getting gutted, which is what I'm fearful of and why I'm talking about this today on this pod. But it's possible that for as many spots as it has, that linebacker ends up having the most bodies come in per capita. It's possible. Now, this is where it also gets interesting, kind of like a D-line. When we go to corner, Florida State's got some guys, some young players. Charles Lester, definitely got talent. Kai Bates, Shamar Arnaud, they got players. And don't forget, Quindarius got hurt early. I believe he's got 2 years of eligibility left. You're in a good spot there. You got a couple young guys coming in. You could have a very good group at corner. Safety, on the other hand, like if you pay up a corner, that's good news. But safety, what if Ashwin Barker, especially if he plays well the last few games, he's got all the measurables. If he turns pro, that's a little iffy. That's probably more than a little iffy. KJ Kirkland, like safety could be a problem. They might have to try to keep somebody from going into the draft because they could be bereft at that spot as well. And that's no good. You do not want to be green at safety in today's world, regardless of who your coordinator is, because of all the different things that go on with teams trying to get over the top. Experience at safety is very, very valuable. I'm curious which guys want to leave and which ones don't. Is Edwin Joseph going to get a reprieve after some of his circumstances with the coaching staff and get a chance with the new staff? I have no idea, but that's interesting. So it's very difficult for me to see anything that is going to be without some hesitation for the new staff at the safety spot, because you don't want to spend a ton of money there. But again, if you don't have some experienced players in the back end and Barker leaves, if Joseph's gone, et cetera, in addition to a few of these other guys, it's hard to say how that's going to go. And I'm not saying Tony White's going to be back running that complex defense again, but any defense that doesn't have some experience at safety is in a lot of danger of having the ball go over its head. So that's something to watch. Speaking of something to watch, I have a couple of things that we all need to pay attention to when Florida State plays Virginia Tech. And I think it's going to decide the game. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game and want to ride that hot hand, FanDuel's got you covered, and they can also set you up for anything that you can imagine, all the way up to late fourth quarter comebacks, who's riding that hot hand in the second quarter. They've got a little bit of everything. Plus, you can combine anything that you have into live bets for same-game parlays or anything else. Just check it out with FanDuel. It keeps the game exciting, especially when your team is making a late fourth quarter push. Right now, for new customers, FanDuel has an opportunity. If you win your first $5 bet, you can get $300 in bonus bets with FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. What is going to happen with Virginia Tech and Florida State with the most awful word in all of sport? Injury. I was listening to Ira and some of the guys over at Knowles, the On3 channel, or War Channel, excuse me. And I was just shocked that I didn't think about it from a broader perspective. This is one of those forest for the tree moments. I'm like, Brian, come on, you should have thought of this. Ira said something about Tommy getting banged up in the second game of the season. And I remember he took a couple of hits. And I even said it to everybody right before the season. I said, Tommy's not going to tell anybody. This is one of the most competitive young men I've ever met in my life. Been around him numerous times. Super competitive to a fault. My guess is he's at 65 to 75%. And you can tell by the way the Jets, when he gets like to that second and third step, he's not the same guy right now. Probably needs a full offseason of barely getting touched, to be honest. Probably lift less if he got a chance to get another year. But it is what it is. So how in the world do we know how he's going to perform, especially red zone against Tech? They got a couple of decent defensive tackles. But at the same time, they've had a bunch of guys, because Brent Pryce, once he got fired, their secondary isn't very good. And they've had some guys, you know what? I'm out. I'm gone. They're vulnerable. Micahi Danzy on one side, Deuce Robinson on the other, McCoy in the middle, Squirrel White mixed in. Could Florida State throw it around 35 times and, really do it? They could. If you trust the ability of the offensive line to pass protect, that's possible. But do you want Tommy getting hit that much? Mike Norvell already said they're going to feature Kromah a little more, which I'm all for anyway. So on one hand, you can look at this like, hey, we got the receivers. We can go after Virginia Tech. And by all means, they should. But what's the quantity? Because do you trust Tommy to be healthy at the end of the game if you keep dropping him back? Sometimes he holds the ball a little too long. He can't take any more shots. I don't know. All these guys, it's important. It's important not to get dinged any more than you have to, because after Tech, you play at NC State, and then you got a game at Gainesville. Those are going to be physical games. I know they're not good teams, but those are two fan bases that do not like you. Their players have nothing to lose. You need Tommy not to take a ton of shots in that game against Virginia Tech. That's going to be hard. I know they're not going to run him on power and sweep, buck sweep, like stuff where they try to pull the team, pull the guards one direction. Tommy goes the opposite, just like totally. They're not going to do that. But if he could throw it 30 times, do I think they would probably beat Tech? Yeah. This is the one game I'd like to see Tommy throw it more. They got guys that defected, but will they risk it? That's one side. Here's the other. Kyron Drones is another guy, although he's bigger than Tommy. There is 0% chance, zero, that he is not banged up. He's been running more. They operate RPO all the time. So even on plays where he does not carry the ball because you're carrying out a quote unquote fake, he's taking shots to the ribs, to the arms, to the upper body, to the chest, however you want to say it. He's probably pretty beat up, and he's not exactly the most accurate guy anyway. Which one of the quarterbacks is healthier? You're sure as heck not going to get an accurate injury report. 0% chance from either coaching staff. No chance. Zero. I think I've mentioned this recently, but I'll say it again. There's another school, not in the ACC. I know somebody who covers them extremely close. They have a quarterback that's got a knee injury that hasn't been reported one time all year. Not one. Completely and blatantly lying on the injury report. Don't think the Florida State and Virginia Tech aren't doing the same thing, especially with the quarterback. I get it, but it makes it really hard to pick these games. So with that, here's the question that I asked on Thursday's show. Ira even brought it up on War Chant too. Does Florida State come out ready for the physicality of Virginia Tech? It's a great question. I just don't know the answer to it. Don't know. If they don't score early, maybe it's a home run shot to Micahi. Something to get the crowd going at Doak, and that place can get rocking. If that doesn't happen, I worry that early inertia coming out of the locker room, being happy to play with your friends, going out and competing every day. Now you get to play a game and Doak. That's fun. But if Tech comes down the field and scores, whether Florida State played well or didn't, if they find a way to score on that first drive, and the crowd kind of ways back just for a second, how will Florida State react? I have not a clue. But one thing I do know, and it is fact, Mike Norvell's teams always seem to screw up whatever I think is going to happen. That has been a fact. Whatever I predict, pretty much the opposite happens. So I was going to pick the Noles to win. That was kind of my early thought, like Monday or so. Then the more I thought about it, the more I leaned towards Tech once I dive into the numbers a little bit more. Then I started thinking about what Ira said and all that, and I'm going to Virginia Tech. I just don't trust Norvell, and I don't trust the players to really want to play for him wholeheartedly for 4 quarters. And that means first play through the last. And that's what it takes to play at P4 level. And I know Virginia Tech's not great, but they got Marcellus, and I forget the other kid's name, the little bowling ball. He's 5'7", 225. He's a horse. He is absolutely a horse. I would not want to get in front of that kid. If you're not committed mentally, are you going to be ready to take on players like that? And on top of it, take on drones? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Give me Virginia Tech, 27-20 over Florida State. It's an upset, but is it really? I think the bookies have it somewhere around 14 points is what somebody told me. I haven't even looked it up. I just don't think Florida State will play all the way full tilt from play one to the end. That is the number one reason I'm picking Virginia Tech. Not because they got talent or they're good running, none of that. I think there will be too many mental errors by Florida State, which they've proven over and over this year. And until otherwise known, I'm going to take the easy answer and just say, I don't trust Florida State. That's my pick. If you disagree, comment down below, have fun with it. I will be happy to address it. But as of right now, Noles, I think they're going to get a loss on their last home game. 27-20, I got Virginia Tech upsetting, for lack of a better term, the Florida State Seminoles. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Come back for the live show on Saturday after the game. It'll be within 10 minutes of the final whistle. What will happen? I don't know. If Florida State really lays an egg, this guy right here will have some choice words, I'm sure. If they win, I will give credit where credit is due. Bottom line, I am always honest on the live shows. That will not change with this one. We will see you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.